You won't believe how a group of ordinary men pulled off a heist that seemed impossible. Midair in broad daylight with millions at stake and vanished without a trace. Every camera, every security guard, every procedure failed to stop them. How did they plan it? Who was inside, who was outside, and where did the money go? This is the story that law enforcement couldn't solve for years. The flight, the money, and the shadows that hide the truth. It was a late summer morning in 1978, just after 6 o'clock, when the first stirrings of the day began at Springfield Regional Airport, a modest yet strategically important hub located on the outskirts of the Midwestern town. The early light spilled across the tarmac, reflecting off the dull metallic surfaces of parked cargo aircraft, fueling trucks, and service vehicles. Inside the small control tower, the air was thick with the scent of coffee and machine oil. Flight controllers, mostly men in their late 30s and early 40s, checked their logbooks meticulously, the scratch of pens punctuating the hum of radios. By 6:15, the first cargo flight, Flight 1124, a twin-engine Lockheed Electra converted for high-value shipments, was scheduled for takeoff to Chicago. Its hold was loaded with nearly $12 million in cash, a mixture of $20, $50, and $100 bills freshly printed and sealed in heavy-duty steel boxes, each weighing approximately 35 kilograms. The shipment was meant for a major bank in downtown Chicago and had been scheduled for transport under the strictest security protocols Springfield had ever seen. A team of 3 armed couriers, all former military, had been assigned to accompany the cargo, and 2 local security officers monitored the hangar access points via manual lock and key systems, combined with a nascent electronic alarm setup, considered state-of-the-art for the time. Thomas Brennan, the chief courier, was a 41-year-old man with graying hair at the temples and a steady, almost stoic demeanor. Formerly a logistics officer in the U.S. Army, he was meticulous, disciplined, and quietly respected among his colleagues. Yet beneath his calm exterior, Thomas carried the burden of personal debts, mortgage payments on a recently purchased house, medical bills for his teenage daughter, and a lingering anxiety from a near-fatal training accident that had left him wary of complacency. He arrived at the hangar at 5:50, notebook in hand, cross-checking manifests with the flight crew, noting discrepancies with surgical precision. He examined the locks on the cargo containers, tapping each box to ensure weight and integrity, and reviewing the security seals. By 6:10 he was satisfied. Nothing appeared out of place, yet an unspoken tension lingered. The cargo plane, gleaming under the morning sun, seemed both innocuous and impossibly vulnerable. Meanwhile, outside the airport perimeter, a black van had been parked inconspicuously behind a small stand of trees near the service road leading to the tarmac. Its engine hummed faintly as 3 men inside ran through the final stages of their preparation. Marcus Keating, the ringleader, was 34, tall and wiry, with a reputation in the underground for meticulous planning and audacious operations. He had spent years analyzing patterns of armored transport and cargo flights, his apartment littered with aviation manuals, blueprints of cargo holds, and photographs of air traffic patterns. His partner in the operation, Lionel Shaw, was 29, a former paratrooper with nerves of steel and the kind of calm precision that made him invaluable when executing timing-dependent tasks. Their third member, Peter Callahan, 27, was a tech-savvy operative, responsible for communications, timing signals, and monitoring airport movements via binoculars and an old police scanner. By 6:20 the team had completed final checks. Marcus examined the green and white parachutes folded neatly in their custom duffel bags, counting each line meticulously. Peter reviewed the radio frequencies, ensuring there would be no interference, while Lionel double-checked the timing devices synced with the plane's scheduled departure. Every detail had been accounted for, down to the exact second each courier would move inside the cargo hold, the weight distribution of the cash boxes, and the exact location of the auxiliary fuel tanks that could double as cover in case of detection. They had run simulations for weeks, plotting the timing of the hangar doors, the patrol routes of security officers, and even the brief morning shift change of the maintenance crew. It was a heist that, on paper, seemed impossible. No recorded breach of such magnitude had ever occurred at Springfield Regional Airport. The cargo manifest system was a near-foolproof combination of paper trails, human oversight, and mechanical security. Inside the hangar, Thomas Brennan and his team loaded the final boxes into the aircraft hold. Each box clicked into place on the reinforced floor rails, the metallic clinks echoing through the cavernous space. Brennan double-checked the seals for tampering, his mind momentarily flickering to the mortgage notice on the kitchen table at home, the image of his daughter sleeping peacefully, an image that grounded him even as a subtle unease crept into his consciousness. Outside, unbeknownst to him, Lionel had already positioned a small remote-controlled device near the cargo bay door, a mechanism designed to release the hatch lock once the plane reached a specific altitude. The idea was audacious: intercept the cache mid-flight without the plane even touching foreign soil. The team had calculated wind speeds, descent angles, and the weight of the parachutes down to the gram. Every second of freefall had been simulated multiple times. At precisely 6:45, Flight 1124 was cleared for taxi. Thomas and his team secured the last straps, double-checked manifests, and communicated with the tower. The runway stretched ahead, damp from an overnight drizzle that had left the asphalt slick and reflective. As the Electra roared to life, the security officers logged final confirmations on their clipboards. Marcus watched from the trees, timing each movement. Lionel adjusted his wristwatch, noting the exact second the plane's wheels lifted from the ground. 6 hours 52 minutes and 37 seconds. A quiet signal from Peter confirmed all systems were nominal. Marcus exhaled slowly. The moment of execution had arrived. The flight proceeded as scheduled, ascending to 3,500 feet over the rolling hills outside Springfield. Brennan meticulously documented each step, noting turbulence, fuel readings, and the condition of the cargo hold. He had no reason to suspect any deviation from protocol. Yet inside the van on the outskirts of town, Marcus initiated the sequence. Lionel pressed a button, activating a mechanical arm that released a weighted cable from the van, which snagged a small, specialized container carried atop the aircraft. The device had been designed to latch onto the cargo hold door remotely, a precision instrument, the result of months of engineering modifications scavenged from surplus military equipment, and late-night testing in abandoned warehouses. The container clicked, the cable ran taut, and the first of the cash boxes began its descent. At 6:55, Thomas noticed something unusual. A faint vibration traveled through the hold, subtle enough that he initially dismissed it as turbulence. But the next series of clicks and metallic thuds were unmistakable. His heart rate accelerated, a cold sweat prickled his neck. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath, reaching for the intercom. Vibration levels, its cargo hold now missing several boxes without any mechanical malfunction. On the ground, Peter and Lionel collected the cash with surgical precision. Each box was verified, packed into waterproof duffels, and loaded into a waiting van. Marcus checked his watch. 7:03. The heist, which would have seemed impossible to any outside observer, had been completed in under 20 minutes from takeoff. The team moved swiftly, disappearing into the thick morning fog of the surrounding forest. At 7:10, the Electra, none the wiser, continued its flight to Chicago, landing on schedule with manifest reports showing no discrepancies, a perfect crime on paper. Back at the hangar, Thomas Brennan and his team began unloading, only to notice the first missing containers. Panic surged through Brennan's mind as he recounted the boxes. This can't be," he said, voice low and tense, his eyes scanning the empty rails where the boxes had been secured. Security officers were immediately alerted. Internal protocols kicked in, but by the time anyone realized the nature of the breach, the cache had vanished without a trace. The airport initiated lockdown procedures, cordoning off perimeters, scanning roads, and checking flight paths. Yet the thieves had anticipated every step. No eyewitnesses, no fingerprints, no disturbed foliage outside the controlled areas, and the parachute drop zone had been chosen with knowledge of restricted forest lands, ensuring privacy and minimal chance of accidental discovery. Within hours, the story spread. Local newspapers ran headlines: $12 million vanishes in midair heist, airport security baffled. FBI agents arrived by 10 o'clock, their black sedans rolling past the hangar with urgency. Interviews began immediately. Thomas Brennan, sitting in a small break room with a cup of cold coffee in his hands, replayed every step in his mind. He recalled the slight vibration, the distant metallic clicks, and the inexplicable missing boxes. His thoughts flickered to suspicion of an inside job. After all, the operation had unfolded with an almost impossibly precise timing. Someone had to know the schedule intimately. Yet there were no obvious leaks among the staff, and every courier had been checked thoroughly. Agents examined the tarmac, control tower logs, and manifest sheets. Forensic accountants began tracing serial numbers on the cash. Although recovery seemed unlikely, each bill had already been dispersed into local and regional banks via clandestine channels established by the thieves months in advance. Initial interviews revealed little, but subtle anomalies began to emerge. A maintenance log entry showing a routine check on the aircraft's undercarriage that had been logged as completed on 6/15, though no one had physically performed it. A minor irregularity in the time-stamped communications between the flight crew and control tower. A witness report from a local farmer claiming to see a small object floating down in the forest near 7 o'clock, dismissed at first as debris. Among the FBI team, a sense of disbelief hung heavy. Lead investigator Karen Mitchell, 42, experienced in organized crime and Midwestern logistics cases, noted in her personal files, "This is a heist unlike any I've seen. Precision timing, perfect execution, zero witnesses. The criminals knew every aspect of our standard procedures. They planned this for months, maybe years. Whoever orchestrated this has inside knowledge, or an almost unnatural understanding of cargo logistics." Her team combed through airport schematics, historical flight paths, and even prior thefts in the region, looking for patterns. Nothing matched the scale and ingenuity of this crime. In the days that followed, rumors began to circulate. Some claimed the money had been moved via underground tunnels, others speculated on mafia involvement, and a few whispered of an international conspiracy, though no evidence supported these claims. Thomas Brennan returned to work under constant surveillance, his routine scrutinized, his trust in colleagues shaken. He replayed the moment in the cargo hold over and over, the vibrations, the clicks, the sudden absence of boxes. Every thought was tinged with guilt and paranoia. Could he have missed a sign? Could someone he knew have been involved? Each night, he documented his actions, hoping to reconstruct the breach, but the reality was that the theft had been executed flawlessly, leaving only questions and the haunting sense that the money might never be recovered. For Marcus Keating and his team, the aftermath was quiet. They laid low, dispersing the cash according to prearranged plans. Yet even among them, tension simmered. They had risked everything: prison sentences, lives, and reputations for this single operation. Marcus reflected privately on the audacity of their plan, noting the moral tightrope. They had stolen millions from a system, yet the couriers and security officers had committed no negligence. It was pure skill versus procedural rigidity. A small smile flickered across his face, knowing that for the moment, no one suspected them. As weeks passed, FBI files grew thicker, interviews expanded, and investigators traced every possible lead. Yet for every clue there seemed to be two more questions. How had the thieves avoided radar detection during the drop? Why were the parachute drop coordinates located on restricted forest land with no known access points? Could it have been planned months in advance, with inside help at Springfield Airport? The investigation was now layered, complex, and sprawling across jurisdictions. The final twist in the first phase of the story came when a low-resolution photograph surfaced from a local birdwatcher's camera. Captured at 6:59, barely a minute after the Electra had lifted, the photo showed a blurred figure descending with a large duffel bag under a parachute. Analysts struggled to identify the figure. Clothing, posture, even parachute design suggested military-grade equipment. Karen Mitchell stared at the image for over an hour, noting every detail. A single word repeated in her head: perfected. The heist had been executed with surgical precision, and the man, or men, behind it had vanished into the forest, leaving only traces that teased the limits of detection. By the end of August, 6 weeks after the heist, Springfield Regional Airport returned to normal operations, yet the echo of that morning lingered. Thomas Brennan still replayed the events in his mind. Marcus Keating and his team were careful to avoid any contact with known associates, and the FBI, now heavily invested, realized that this was the beginning of a larger investigation, one that would stretch decades and span multiple states, involving not just theft, but deception, psychological warfare, and an intricate web of premeditation. Somewhere in the woods outside Springfield, the money waited, and the question remained: who orchestrated the impossible, and how long could such a perfect crime remain hidden from the eyes of law and order? As dusk fell on the small Midwestern town, Karen Mitchell reviewed the timeline once more, her fingers tracing the sequence of events down to the exact second. The faint hum of the ceiling fan above her office mingled with the ticking of the wall clock, a reminder of time's inexorable march. Somewhere the criminals were celebrating, or perhaps already planning their next move. The city slept unaware that millions had vanished into thin air, and that the first chapter of one of the most audacious heists in American history had just concluded. Yet in the shadows, hints of betrayal, miscalculated risks, and secrets yet to be unearthed lingered, promising that the story was far from over. The files on Thomas Brennan's desk, the preliminary forensic reports, the faint footprints in the forest, all pointed toward a truth that remained tantalizingly out of reach. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Karen Mitchell knew this. When a crime this perfect occurs, the unraveling can be equally spectacular. The first phase of Flight 1124's disappearance of cash ended with a whisper of wind through the trees and the distant hum of engines returning to hangars. Yet beneath the quiet, the world shifted imperceptibly. Every routine check, every log entry, every mundane act within the airport and the surrounding town was now a piece of a puzzle that could, and would, consume years of investigation. And for the criminals who had vanished, the thrill of the impossible heist carried a shadow. One misstep, one overlooked detail could bring it all crashing down. But as of that morning in 1978, the money was gone, the perpetrators invisible, and the stage set for a decades-long pursuit that blurred the lines between genius, audacity, and the inexorable pursuit of justice. The case files closed for the first time, but the narrative was only beginning. Somewhere deep in the undergrowth of the forest outside Springfield, a rustling hinted at movement. The bags of cash, neatly secured and accounted for, waited. The question that hung in the minds of every investigator, journalist, and bystander remained: who would crack the code, and when would the first thread of truth finally emerge? The weeks following the audacious mid-air heist of Flight 1124 became one of the most intricate investigations Springfield and the FBI had ever undertaken. By late September 1978, a temporary field office was set up in a converted hangar near the airport, walls covered with maps, photographs, and strings connecting every lead, witness statement, and anomaly. Lead investigator Karen Mitchell coordinated local law enforcement, forensic accountants, and aviation analysts to trace $12 million in cash that had vanished seemingly into thin air and identify the individuals responsible. Initial interviews with airport staff revealed minor inconsistencies in logs, security checklists, and communications, yet cumulatively suggested inside knowledge. Thomas Brennan's meticulous recounting of cargo procedures became central. Agents examined every container check, serial number, and boarding sequence. His credibility, grounded in military discipline and courier experience, lent critical weight to the investigation. Forensic accountants analyzed banking records for unusual transfers or deposits, but the criminals' careful dispersal of cash through intermediaries left the trail cold. Aerial reconnaissance identified small forest clearings consistent with parachute landings, yet searches recovered only discarded duffel bags, not the money. Signal intelligence revealed subtle anomalies in tower communications and unaccounted-for vehicles near the airport, reinforcing the theory of inside assistance. Behavioral profiling suggested a small, methodical team capable of high-stakes coordination under pressure. Examination of the Electra revealed minor abrasions and misalignments in the cargo hold doors, consistent with external interference, possibly using a remote hook and release system. Calculations confirmed that at 3,500 feet, parachutes could safely deliver the cash boxes to predetermined locations. Witness interviews in surrounding areas described fleeting shadows, rustling underbrush, and parachutes tangled in trees, while forensic analysis of duffel bags and rope fibers indicated military-grade materials. Financial investigations traced small cash deposits across multiple states, suggesting deliberate insulation of intermediaries from the core team. Enhanced photographs and surveillance analysis revealed coordinated clothing, identical equipment, and parachutes matching specialized manufacturing batches. A retired accomplice recalled interactions with a man possessing intimate knowledge of cargo schedules, indirectly pointing toward Marcus Keating. Psychological profiles and expert reconstructions highlighted the audacity, planning, and technical skill required for the heist. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the perpetrators remained elusive, and the majority of the cash unrecovered. Karen Mitchell summarized in a memo, "This wasn't just theft. It was a demonstration of planning, patience, and audacity. Whoever orchestrated this understood every aspect of human and mechanical behavior in this environment. We're chasing ghosts in plain sight. The investigation pressed on, methodically cataloging evidence, analyzing leads, and reconstructing the operation, aware that each clue brought them closer to understanding a heist that had rewritten the rules of criminal ingenuity. By 1982, nearly 4 years after the Flight 1124 heist, law enforcement had enough evidence to move forward. Marcus Keating and Lionel Shaw, the primary suspects, were apprehended after careful surveillance, leaving only the elusive Peter Callahan at large. Keating's calm composure contrasted with Shaw's visible anxiety. Both were subjected to intense interrogation. Keating confirmed methods, timing mechanisms, and parachute logistics but withheld accomplices' identities, while Shaw corroborated details, revealing the precision required to execute the heist and evade security protocols. The trial began in Springfield Federal Court, with a gallery packed with journalists, family members, and curious citizens. The prosecution meticulously reconstructed the August 14, 1978 events: timing of cargo inspections, coordination of operatives, and parachute drop logistics. Expert witnesses detailed the improbability of the theft without insider knowledge, emphasizing planning, technical skill, and psychological manipulation. Defense attorneys challenged evidence reliability and witness recollection but could not counter the overwhelming convergence of physical, financial, and testimonial evidence. Courtroom reconstructions of cargo holds, flight sequences, and parachute drops stunned attendees, highlighting both audacity and meticulous planning. Thomas Brennan's first-hand account of procedural compliance and the months of anxiety afterward became pivotal. Financial traces, partial recovery of cash, and analysis of shell accounts reinforced culpability, even as the majority of the money remained missing. Psychological evaluations underscored the calculated risk-taking, moral disengagement, and careful orchestration demonstrated by the criminals. Ultimately, Keating received a life sentence plus additional years. Shaw's sentence was slightly reduced for cooperation. Peter Callahan remained at large, a lingering mystery. The heist's legacy endured as an unparalleled criminal feat, with lessons in logistics, psychology, and planning. Even decades later, investigators noted fragments like a partially destroyed notebook detailing operations, confirming the genius and audacity behind Flight 1124. Justice had been served, but unresolved questions, missing money, hidden accomplices, and Callahan's fate, kept the case alive in criminal lore, illustrating that even the most meticulous plans leave shadows and unanswered questions. Even after the convictions of Marcus Keating and Lionel Shaw, the Flight 1124 heist continued to cast a long shadow over Springfield and the wider aviation community. Investigators remained fixated on the missing operative, Peter Callahan, whose disappearance from public view suggested a meticulous exit strategy and a continued ability to evade detection. FBI agents revisited all known drop zones, conducting fresh searches using updated aerial photography, soil analysis, and canine units trained to detect human scent over extended periods. Each lead produced fragments, torn parachute straps, partial duffel bags, and faint soil impressions, but never the cache, never the figure of Callahan. Financial investigators continued to trace complex laundering paths, uncovering obscure shell companies in neighboring states and a network of intermediaries who had long since dissolved or vanished, leaving only digital breadcrumbs and paper trails that hinted at a larger operation than anyone had initially suspected. Interviews with retired airport personnel and confidential informants revealed whispered recollections, glimpses of unmarked vehicles, fleeting shadows moving through storage hangars at odd hours, and cryptic conversations referencing past operations, all suggesting that while Keating and Shaw had been caught, the heist's orchestration extended beyond them. Analysts began hypothesizing that Flight 1124 was only one component of a series of meticulously planned operations, leveraging insider knowledge, specialized equipment, and a deep understanding of human behavior. The psychological impact on investigators was palpable. Decades of training could not fully prepare them for the audacity, patience, and precision required to execute such a crime, nor the frustration of knowing that some threads would likely remain unresolved. Yet the team pressed on, methodically piecing together the mosaic of evidence, aware that each recovered artifact, financial record, and witness account was a potential key to understanding the full scope of the operation. And somewhere, far beyond their reach, Peter Callahan remained a ghost in the system, the last unsolved variable in a crime that had rewritten the rules of midair heists and left a lingering question that continued to haunt both law enforcement and the public alike. Where had the bulk of the $12 million truly gone, and could it ever be recovered? Years after the Flight 1124 heist, the search for unrecovered cash and the elusive Peter Callahan intensified as new intelligence surfaced from sources previously considered unreliable. Anonymous tips led investigators to abandoned warehouses and storage units across the Midwest, each location revealing fragments of the operation, discarded equipment, partial manifests, and coded notes that suggested a broader network than originally documented. Forensic teams meticulously cataloged every detail, from fiber remnants on duffel bags to minute soil samples indicating repeated human activity, while financial analysts traced complex sequences of small, untraceable transactions that pointed toward hidden stashes of the missing $12 million. Every discovery reignited questions about the scale of the heist and the sophistication of its perpetrators, highlighting the meticulous planning that had allowed them to evade detection for years. Psychological profiles were updated, suggesting that Callahan operated as a master of invisibility, capable of anticipating investigative moves and exploiting gaps in human perception. Interviews with retired accomplices, now distant and wary, hinted at internal disagreements, cautious mistrust, and strategic compartmentalization, underscoring that Flight 1124 was not merely a theft but an orchestrated exercise in precision, patience, and control. Even decades later, law enforcement teams remained haunted by the same unnerving truth. Despite convictions and partial recovery, the operation's core remained untouched, its architects largely invisible, and the majority of the fortune still unaccounted for. Each lead offered both hope and frustration, a reminder that genius-level criminal planning often leaves shadows too deep to fully illuminate, and that in the world of high-stakes heists, the line between closure and enduring mystery is razor-thin. By the late 1980s, over a decade after the Flight 1124 heist, the investigation had matured into a complex web of leads, confessions, and partial recoveries, yet certain key elements remained unresolved. Marcus Keating and Lionel Shaw were serving long sentences in federal penitentiaries, their daily routines now dictated by walls and schedules rather than audacity and precision. Yet the figure of Peter Callahan continued to haunt law enforcement. Despite widespread searches, confidential informants, and routine monitoring of financial systems, no definitive trace of Callahan surfaced, leaving authorities to speculate whether he had retired, assumed a new identity, or even orchestrated a final disappearance with the same meticulous care that had characterized the original operation. Investigators revisited every recovered artifact from the parachute drop zones, including fragments of duffel bags, harnesses, and parachute cords, cross-referencing them with serial numbers and manufacturing records. Every detail was painstakingly documented. Slight abrasions on cargo hold doors, soil samples indicating repeated landings in forested clearings, and partially recovered cash bundles. Analysts discovered patterns suggesting that a portion of the stolen funds had been strategically laundered through complex sequences of shell accounts and real estate transactions, with small sums funneled to intermediaries operating independently of the main operatives. The trail, though partially reconstructed, remained tantalizingly incomplete, as if Callahan had deliberately engineered a series of dead ends. Meanwhile, retired lead investigator Karen Mitchell and her team began compiling a comprehensive case study, integrating witness statements, forensic findings, financial analyses, and psychological profiles. Interviews with airport personnel who had worked during the 1978 heist revealed lingering fear, guilt, and obsession with the event. Thomas Brennan recounted his daily routines at the airport, emphasizing procedural compliance and the crushing psychological toll that accompanied the realization that millions of dollars had vanished under his watch. His meticulous logs, once intended purely for operational clarity, became key evidence not only for reconstruction but also for understanding human behavior under extreme stress. Psychologists consulted on the case noted the remarkable interplay of greed, precision, and moral disengagement among the criminals, highlighting how the heist exemplified both technical mastery and deep psychological understanding. Each discovery, while illuminating, reinforced the central enigma. The majority of the money in one operative remained unrecovered, creating an enduring sense of incomplete closure. Partial restitution efforts over the following years allowed authorities to return a fraction of the stolen funds to affected parties, though the bulk of the $12 million remained unaccounted for, hidden in undisclosed locations or laundered through intricate networks. Investigators speculated that Callahan had retained a significant portion, possibly leveraging it to support a new life under an alias, or had redistributed it strategically to complicate tracking. Retired accomplices occasionally surfaced, providing fragmented testimony about the methods, timing, and moral dilemmas involved in the operation, yet no one could conclusively account for Callahan's whereabouts. These revelations reinforced the heist's reputation as not only audacious but enduringly elusive. In the final analysis, the Flight 1124 heist left an indelible mark on criminal investigation, aviation security, and financial forensic methods. The case study compiled by Karen Mitchell and her team became a seminal reference in law enforcement circles, illustrating the importance of behavioral analysis, meticulous documentation, and cross-disciplinary collaboration in tackling complex crimes. The meticulous reconstruction of the parachute drop, cargo manipulation, and financial dispersal provided crucial lessons in anticipating criminal ingenuity, underscoring the limitations of conventional security protocols. Even decades later, aviation security specialists studied the heist as a case of operational precision, risk management, and psychological insight, demonstrating that the event's implications extended far beyond the immediate theft. Yet despite the wealth of documentation, expert analysis, and courtroom closure, the Flight 1124 heist retained its mystique. The majority of the cash, Peter Callahan, and certain undisclosed methods used during the operation remained beyond the reach of investigators, a testament to the sophistication of the original crime. Karen Mitchell reflected years later in her memoirs, "The heist wasn't just a theft, it was a study in patience, coordination, and the human mind's capacity for both brilliance and moral compromise. Even when justice is served, some shadows linger." Flight 1124 will always remind us that not all endings are final, and some truths remain deliberately hidden. The story concluded not with total closure but with a lingering tension between achievement and enigma, a reminder that in crimes of extraordinary audacity, certain threads will forever remain just out of reach, leaving investigators, historians, and the public to ponder the enduring legacy of one of the most audacious aerial robberies in history.